Hi, Stephen.
Uh,
So great to have you here.
Thank you. Hello, Margo.
Long
Nice.
distance, but technique works for us in this case. Um, I would very much like to ask you some questions about the upcoming workshops in November. We have two workshops scheduled, and the one is November 4, 5, and 6. And we're first going to talk about that one. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, this is good.
Okay, great. Um, we're going to do another Fields of Grace workshop, and we have done that in Amsterdam since 2009. So we have a lot of experience in that, me in organizing, you in doing the workshops. Um, what do you think it is that people look for when they sign up for a workshop in Fields of Grace style?
Well, they're wanting a solution or a resolution to something that so far they haven't sorted out, and through other means. They want some change to occur, some healing to occur, some freedom from some issue. Um, they want their lives to be different. Yeah.
And in your experience, does change happen fast or does it take a while? Or I was there as well, but I'd like to ask you as an expert, uh, how does this happen? People want change and they want something to heal. Can they expect to be healed in one weekend, or will it take a bit longer? Or yeah, what is the...
Well, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Well, Fields of Grace is a registered trademark of mine, and it's in English-speaking countries where constellations are facilitated. They commonly know that as the knowing field. And what Fields of Grace or the knowing field refers to is a non-ordinary reality that's a part of our lives that we don't typically think of, and our culture teaches us to deny, because it's something that's distinct from and beyond our personality and our psychology. It's distinct from our mind and our intellect and our conceptual world. It's distinct from our imagination, and it's distinct from our body, though it's related to these things. And the knowing fields or fields of grace involve something that many people call spiritual work. I don't use that term a whole lot, but it is in fact energy work, which is kind of is a metaphor also for these non-ordinary realities. And so when people come to work, they may have exhausted psychological approaches or physical approaches, and the work that we do is done in primarily energy and another thing called intent. That's part of a non-ordinary reality. When we're changing energy to energy change happens like that. It's immediate. And that's the work we do in the field. However, when we're making changes that affect us physically or psychologically, although the change shifts immediately in the energetic reality, it takes time to transform and move through one system so that people experience their lives as different. Now, very often they experience an immediate shift, and yet things may or may not change in their ordinary reality for a while. Sometimes the change is really, really quickly. Sometimes the change goes unnoticed by the person until someone says to them, "Oh, by the way, how come you're so different?" Sometimes the change occurs over a slower period of time, and people are either aware of it or not. And sometimes the change happens in a way where people are faced with a decision that they may have been faced with before, but now they can actually choose and execute the choice they make. So there are a lot of variables to say how soon people experience their lives as different. Generally, though, it's rather immediate, hours, days, weeks, something like that.
That sounds very interesting for me. If you state it like this, I have seen the processes, of course, and hearing you now, I think, yeah, that's really what happens, because there's something you feel immediately, and on the other hand, you have to wait until it sort of manifests in normal life, and in that way, the changes are very often not immediate, but in the sort of feeling on the inside, it could change immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. And sometimes people report back to me. Sometimes somebody will come to me and they'll have a really huge family problem they have lots of siblings and there's a big problem. And sometimes those people will come back 3 years later and say that, things got really rather chaotic and were difficult, but now we are 3 years out and everything is perfect. And even though I can't explain, I just feel and know that the work that we did was the difference that made the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Some families experience change in their family system immediately. And yet I work with many more issues than just family issues. So
could you give us a few examples of other issues that people can bring in the workshop, apart from their family problems or their
Well, I'm one of these guys that will work with any issue that someone brings me, with the exception of if someone comes and says, "Look, I want to fix my spouse. He or she is broken." I won't do it. If somebody wants to heal a parent or somebody in their own family that is older than themselves, I won't do that. And it's simply part of the structure of the models that I use with Constellations. But any conceivable issue that someone comes to, one time I'm thinking of a guy came to me and he said, I have this friend and suddenly, we've been friends for 15 years and suddenly there's a crisis and he's really upset with me. And we'll take a look at it, and it turns out that this guy these guys knew each other in some other lifetime. And we simply go to whatever that energetic space is and make the correction, and then the change is made. The other area that I'm not keen on working with, or I will not work with, if someone comes to me and says, "Look, there's a lot of trouble in some part of the world, and I would like to set a constellation to provide healing for them and to settle the political difficulties or to stop the war." And I say, "Well, my friend, that's a psychological issue. That's a concern you have at a psychological level, and yet you personally do not have any energetic connection with any person there."
Yeah, so you have to have your own connection to this issue. For example, if you would have to go there, or if you have lived there, or if you know people in that area, then you could work with it probably. Because then you're connected.
Yeah, and it may simply not be that you know someone there, but knowing it is possible if someone simply knows someone there that they have a close relationship with.
Yeah.
But then we're actually working with my client herself, who's coming requesting it, and her energetic relationship with her friend who's in that country that may be in peril.
Yeah.
We're not actually working with the other, we're working with this one. And
yeah.
Now, I know there are people who set constellations, in fact, hold quite big gatherings to set constellations for problem areas on the planet. And that, in general, is a great psychological exercise. I don't believe it has any energetic impact on any of the realities, unless by chance there happens to be some person in that audience who is personally connected with someone in that circumstance. So the answer is, I'll work with any issue that where there's an actual energetic personal connection, or familial connection, or ancestral connection, or business connection.
And then in the case that well, what you have once called, you have standing, you are allowed to work with that, because you also said you don't work with people who ask a question for their parents, or people who are really older or higher in hierarchy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I had forgotten. Yeah, that is the term that fits. Is that we have to have standing or the authority or place to make a change in someone else's life, and but that change, that say you have an issue with your child and you want some assistance. Yeah, I'll work with your child because you have the authority, work with you regarding your child because you have the authority to affect and help your children. But it's only up to the point of their free will. And that is very, that shows up very clearly when we're working in these fields of grace. And I'm working with some issue that your son or daughter may have. Oftentimes we'll bump up to a place where we get to do this and this and this, and because the field informs what changes. But oftentimes there'll be something, a message in the field that, oh, we stop here because we're bumping up against that person's free will, and then we simply stop.
Yeah. Well, that's quite clear, and it also is a very integral way to work, I feel.
The integral or integrity, that it means wholeness, and that the thing about constellations, it's looking at us as human beings in our wholeness, and that we have to work with our wholeness in models that are whole and in ways that are whole, rather than based on kind of our biases or our fears psychologically. That we have to be clean, whole witnesses, and deploy methods that themselves are clean and whole, and honoring and respectful of the person and the people and the larger systems that all of us are a part of.
Thank you. It's a lot that you just sort of summarized, a lot I have seen in action in the fields when you work and I'm there. But it's great to hear you talk about it in just some minutes, to give really the essence of what your work is about. And
thank you. And sometimes I'm afraid that I talk a little quickly about this. I'm a bit passionate about this work. And so if I'm talking too quickly, remind me to slow down.
Okay, when I thought it was still okay.
Oh, you let me know.
Yeah, and we will work it out. It will probably be
okay.
We're also going to do a new kind of workshop. I'm going to look at my other paper, and this new workshop is a workshop for small business owners, and we are planning a 2-day workshop for them, especially. And yeah, what do you want to say?
Well, before we go there's one thing I would like to add to Constellation work, and that there's a way in which my work, I think, differs from what others do, and it has two things. It involves two things. One is that along the way, when I very early in my training with Hellinger and those I've trained with, Hellinger made the statement of let the work be the teacher. And when he said that, I stopped reading any books on constellations, and I stopped listening to other constellation facilitators. And I continued working with constellations. But there's something that I did that's kind of in an ancillary way, is that I started studying some mystical traditions. One is the Andean path of the Caro Indians of the Peruvian Andes. And I worked with and still work with some Toltec based mystical traditions. And then I worked with a neuroscientist who had this phenomenal capacity to see into non-ordinary realities. And yet, and even today, I continue working with a former NASA engineer who also has a phenomenal ability to read and see energy and work with non-ordinary realities. And I still study with that guy. And the long and short of it is, even though I let the field teach me about constellation phenomenon, my capacity to see really was developed and grew so that I could work in these non-ordinary realities and often see very much more than other facilitators. And there are times when facilitators use the constellation technology, but they do it more in a psychological way, more like the psychodrama days that, or the constellation kind of work that Virginia Satir did. Both really great processes and useful, but just they're different rather than energetic and working in the non-ordinary. The last distinction that marks me out differently in the process of working with the mystical people, what I've seen is instead of working simply with ancestral and family issues, I see that there's an energetic system or a community of the self, that each of us has our psychological and imaginal components, but we also have a body. But in addition, there's a whole community of non-ordinary aspects and parts of us that exist in lots of the non-ordinary realities. And I found that when I make changes there in the person, oftentimes that shortcuts the need to work with ancestral or familial issues, or we can do those very briefly and then further to make changes in a person. Am I saying this in any way that's coherent or clear?
For me, it is quite clear. My handicap is, of course, that I know you and I've worked before with you, so it makes it easier to follow what you say and to understand. I think the term non-ordinary reality could be translated, maybe you can say if I'm right, in what I sometimes call the invisible world. There's the
Perfect.
world that is visible to our senses, and there's also an invisible world that is also that can also be sensed and known, but not with our senses, not with the normal eyes and ears and touch, but we still know and we still feel. And of course that's also connected to ways of perceiving that have developed in your mystical work with the traditions, and that's also the way we know each other, because I was working in that too, and so I understand. And I hope the viewers will understand what we are saying now. If not, they can always get in touch and ask more. But I think it is quite clear what you mean. So,
thank you for that. Your words "invisible world" is very clarifying, and I like it even better than the words I used. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was maybe a bit fast with making the shift to the small business workshop. But of course, in that area, there are people with questions about their own small business that also have these same aspects in the invisible world, you could say, where certain problems they experience in their business come from. So what is the different approach for, let's say, the small business owners that we're now going to work with? We have the work in the personal field. We just talked about it. Now we're going to do a separate workshop for these people. Will the approach be different? I expect so. In a certain way, but in another way it will be the same. So I'm curious. Answer now.
Yeah, how do I follow
get
that?
out of this? Yeah.
So let me. again, what most of us are never taught, or we're taught to deny, we're taught to deny that there is, in fact, an invisible world and an invisible system in operation. And it's as true in a personal life or a family life as it is in a business life. And that in an equivalent way, when two people get together and form a family, they create an energetic field that is a part of their ancestral field. And when their children go, they take parts of this field with them into their own lives and the fields that they create. When people create an organization, whether it's a business or an NGO or a political organization, whenever they form an organization, they too form a field or a system that literally has a life of its own. It's distinct from the people, and yet it's in very much reflects the behavior of people, and that there are things that we do that have only kind of a local, personal, or interpersonal effect. So if I touch my hand to a stove and I burn myself and I get angry and yell at a colleague or a spouse for this, I create a little bit of a local trauma or drama. But there are other things that we do that create impacts into the larger system. And that's something that people, well, again, we're not taught to recognize that those things exist. So, for example, if someone founds or starts a small company, and a friend gave them the idea for the company, and they begin the company and never acknowledge where their idea came from, they've created a problem in the field, and their organization is going to struggle because of that, the failure to acknowledge the idea or the intellectual property upon which this company was based.
They should honor this person that gave them the idea at the first time, or something like that. They should really realize that and know it from the inside that.
Yeah. And yet the very odd thing is sometimes a psychological acknowledgement is insufficient. The energy has to happen, or the acknowledgement has to happen in energy.
And this working with the energies, that is especially something that you do in the constellation work. You have certain rituals for it, you have certain models for it, certain words also. And as I experience it, you have a very sharp and loving eye to see what is going on and how to fix it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute something, but yeah, because you now talk about what should happen, and I just want to add, I think it does happen when you work with people. So yeah, and the same is, the same kind of processes are probably there in personal work and in business work, but in business it may have different consequences if you have certain things in the energy level, in the invisible world, that are not working well.
Yeah, besides when this is kind of a mean thing to say, but years ago, a consultant, a friend of mine, said, the biggest problem any company has is its owner and its founder. And in my own life, I've had my own corporation for 22 years, and it's very clear that me personally has been the biggest problem for my company. Meaning that my foibles and my places where I still need to grow are constantly in the way of my company. But distinct from that, there are other issues in a company. For example, I remember some guys coming to me and they said, look, we pay our overhead every month, and we pay the costs, they call it costs of goods sold. and we pay our overhead, but that we absolutely have no profit. And so we looked in the field, and in energy, there was no place for profit to happen in their company. It simply didn't exist in the field. And the thing that we're never taught is things that exist in this shared reality or consensual reality of ours have to exist first in energy before they can exist here in this reality. And for whatever reason, there was no such thing as profit. And so we established in energy this phenomenon called profit, so that this company could not only continue to pay its overhead and its cost of goods sold, but start to get some profit from the whole thing. So it's kind of indefensible intellectually that we can install something in energy and have it start working, but it happens, and it happens all the time.
So here I jump in for a moment.
Yes, please.
Indefensibly intellectually is quite a wordful. You mean you cannot really understand it with the head, but you can see it happening in energy, or you can feel it with the heart.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It doesn't seem like it's a plausible or rational thing, and yet I want to make a comment here that's something that half the population know entirely well, and that is women. If you ask a woman to how she knows whether someone is noticing her or checking her out, she'll say, well, I sense it. If you ask a woman to, are there rooms or businesses you walk into or people you're around, and how do you know whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable there? They say, well, I feel it. So half the people on the planet, as a part of their nature, perceive these non-ordinary realities or parts of them. And they've essentially, our world has essentially said, well, don't talk about that. Certainly not in business. But the same way that a woman knows what's going on somewhere in energy, it's not a rational thing in a man's perspective. And yet it's the same process or same phenomena when you're working with change in an organization. So say, for example, somebody is, say you have a supervisor working for you and they fire somebody really with no adequate grounds. And later you learn about that supervisor made that poor choice and you terminate that supervisor and hire a new one. Well, the new one that comes into that position is already in trouble because the problem of the wrongful termination stays in that position. It doesn't go away with the person.
Yeah.
And so
it's connected to the position that someone takes and not, okay.
Yeah, it's called the functional area, but in energy terms, it's literally a place. And it's a little bit like a node in an electrical circuit, or think of the house is wired and it has rheostats for the lights. That sometimes you adjust the rheostat so the light gets dimmer. Well, when someone creates a problem in the company, they're putting a restriction on the flow of energy through that system. And the whole system will be less light as a consequence.
Yeah.
And so the company Constellations is to go in and open up the flow of energy so that there's the strength and buoyancy for the company to succeed.
And is this connected to our position as a small business owner? I mean, you have a small business, I have a small business. We're going to work with people who have a small business. We're the boss. You just said you were the main person getting in the way of your own company. I think I can relate to that. So there's always this one-to-one level reflection, influences, reciprocity, I don't know, between the business and our own person, and all the processes that are going around in the business and in the person, and vice versa. So the position of being the boss, which is sort of natural for a small business owner, makes some problems, but probably it also affects who we are, is affecting the business, but also our network and how we work together with other people and how we make joint efforts in creating some things in the world, like we are now joining our efforts to create something, and all small business owners work together with others. So is this a bit, can I say this is related to how bigger organizations also have these flows of energy, that we as small business owners also create things in our environment, in our network, and that we could work with that to clean it, to clear it up?
Yeah, if I understand you, the system is the same whether it's a large business or small business, but it's simply levels of complexity increase. And when working in large companies or even medium-sized companies, of course, they say a small business is under 20 million. So,
oh my God.
so even our small businesses, when you work with bigger businesses than what you and I have, or what maybe some of our clientele have, then you
probably they won't have 20 million. So,
well, you simply work with parts of it, because they're a large company is simply a system with a center with many centers around it. And the same is true in your business or mine. There's a center and then many small centers. They're just fewer than in a big company. And so, but the process and the way energy moves is the same. And oftentimes, the issues that happen that a company is dealing with are not a consequence of anything that any of they themselves, the owners or their employees, have done. Sometimes it's your supply chain. Sometimes it's your vendors. Sometimes it's the way the raw materials of whatever product you offer were obtained, and where they're obtained. And it's very common that someone will come to me and they'll say, I'm difficulty making sales, and we take a look up their supply chain and then look up their raw materials of the little object they're selling, and that they were obtained through what do you want to call it? Disrespectful labor, where people were exploited. They were obtained on land that was obtained illegally, or there were shady deals around the purchase of the property where the resources were. Now there's a mower going on outside I'm in my home office, and there's a lawnmower going out here, so I don't know whether you can hear it.
I cannot hear anything of a mower, so good for the grass. No problem over here.
Okay.
It's okay. Now, I was just wondering what you were saying about some of the things, the supplies were obtained in a disrespectful way. Could that apply also for people who sell information or services like us? We don't sell products, but we sell service. We sell our knowledge, our information. We gather this information from all different sources. I personally think it is a good thing to make clear, where, as you just did in the mystical traditions, in Hellinger work, that it all comes together, and then of course you add your own interpretation, your own style, your own personality, energy, etc. But it is a good thing to make clear where it all comes from. And so I think that could be the same for selling services or information, that you have to be respectful, you have to make it clear, it should be honest sources. How do you feel about that? Is it making sense what I'm saying now, or?
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm appreciating you saying this because the services are fit in the same category, and it's. I'm remembering a very large and what's now successful yoga studio where the owner came to me and she said, you know, I'm really having difficulty keeping enough yoga teachers, and so I asked her whether she honored her teachers and the particular yoga tradition that she's a part of. And so we did a constellation, and we did an honoring of the founders of her particular type of yoga, and honoring the path, and honoring her individual teachers. And then I asked her to place in her studio somewhere photographs of the founder of her tradition, and to have what I called an honor wall, where she pays respect to the lineage and the path.
Like a
And
little altar, or yeah.
well, it could be an altar. It's there's a beautiful thing in a lot of Chinese restaurants that I go into. They always have an altar. And yet in some business settings, an altar might not be right, but you can certainly have something on the wall.
Yeah.
And within something like 4 months after she did this, suddenly there was a little slight turnover in yoga teachers, and she had the right staffs, and they were turning up and showing up for their classes, and everything smoothed out with something that simple as honoring and acknowledging where the services came from.
Sounds like magic exists after all, Stephen.
I think so.
Yes.
In fact, my term fields of grace, that it came to me years ago, probably 15 years ago at least, when I was running. And to me, it has to do with grace moves and love heals. And that applies whether it's a personal life or an organizational life. That to me, the energy in the cosmos, in the universe, is love. And sometimes we experience it in a gentle or nice, beautiful flow. And sometimes we experience it in forms of difficulty. And the punchline, I think, all of us want a good life, and to be able to be ourselves, and to express ourselves in the ways we want. And that happens in a business life, and it happens in a personal life or a family life. And that's what this work is about, is really moving us toward having the kind of expression we want. And in the sense that the universe or cosmos or the mystery is love, so are we. And our jobs on the planet, I think, are to be fully expressed, or to love completely. And I don't mean in any new age, airy-fairy way, but I mean simply to be who we are and do what we can do to the best of our ability, so that we have the kind of experiences and expression we want. That's love. And I guess I said enough there. Your turn.
Yeah, you could talk for hours, but I think you expressed it quite clearly and to the point, or I don't know exactly the English words that I could use, maybe, but yeah, something like that.
Well, you always blow me away, because here you are in your life not talking English, and then as soon as you get to me, you talk English, and it's perfect. So I'm always tickled with your ability. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Lots of compliments going around the globe right now.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, it's okay. I have a few questions about, of course, I have been there and I've seen it, but I would like you to talk a little bit more about being in the Constellation workshop. People can ask their own question. They can present their own issue they want to work on, whether it is the personal or the business. Doesn't matter. Being in the workshop, they also are present with the constellation of the others. People will be representatives of either persons or energies or circumstances in the constellation of the other persons, the other people in the workshop, and sometimes they will just observe. And now several people have experienced that sometimes it's even a better experience, or the change is even more clear or profound when they are a representative of, they are an energy at that moment. They embody the energy that suddenly makes them realize something for their own issue, and it changes them a lot. And it could even happen when you observe. Could you say a little bit more about that? Because it's a big reason why it's so effective to be in a workshop with a group and not doing an individual constellation. That's an important aspect.
Yeah. Firstly, I'm going to start real abstract.
Okay.
That my thinking is that the primary reason that we're on this planet is to be changed in the direction of enlightenment. In other words, to grow and develop spiritually and physically, so that our ego and our personality and our actions are more aligned with an essential aspect of ourselves that is seemingly quite distant from our local lives. And the thing that also is a bit abstract is the whole Constellation weekend, the whole 3-day weekend, is one way to look at it. It is the whole weekend from the time we start on a Friday morning until we end on a Sunday evening is one constellation. And that everyone present and everything said and every movement we make and every individual constellation we do is a healing movement or healing statement within the constellation of the total weekend. The other thing about a constellation work that's so wonderful is that all of us are changed, whether we're simply sitting in the room or standing in as a representative of something important in someone else's constellation, that we experience the benefit. It will resonate, and any part of our system that has even a hint of resonance with what's going on will start moving and changing in a way that expands and heals us. When another thing that whenever anyone asks for any particular healing or any particular change, silently and unconsciously, they're also asking for the question they ask silently is, heal my heart. Will you heal my heart? And that occurs as a part of the constellation process. When someone stands in as a representative or someone sits and observes and witnesses a constellation, there's an expansion that happens. In other words, when someone stands in, and if a man stands in and represents a woman in a certain circumstance, for example, he has an experience that he as a man in his ordinary life will never have. But in that moment, in that place and time, he has the experience of what it's like to be a woman in that circumstance. And he's irrevocably changed and expanded, and quite often has a greater capacity for compassion. The changes are limitless. I mean, someone can come in for 1 or 2 days of the workshop and it's good. But that's a bit like eating a meal, and you have the protein you need, and you have the fats you need, and the carbohydrates. But you may not get all the vitamins or micronutrients you need unless you're there for the whole time, because
You may not get the total experience of enjoying this delicious meal or something like that, because it's a little bit more divided.
Yeah, it's coming in and taking a bite of one of the food items on the plate and walking away. And it's okay. valuable and necessary. And there's sometimes when people cannot give more time to, but if they can, it's a complete life-changing experience that's in the direction of the positive, in the direction of healing, in the direction of expansion.
Yeah. And how would this work in the small business owners workshop? Because then the field has much more to do with all the businesses and the connections on that level. And can you imagine how that will work as a whole experience?
Yeah, I don't even have to imagine, because I've done it enough times with groups of business people that oftentimes people have very similar issues in their companies. Even though, so I get 10 business people together who they're either department heads or project leads or part of executive committees, or they're owners of their business, or and they know the problems that go on. And this person will say, well, I have this problem I want to deal with. And then person over here will say, well, I have that same problem too, even though that's not the one I'm going to ask about. So we fix the problem here and talk about it so that people can understand it in it's the non-ordinary or the invisible influences. And then this person has resolution and knows what to do when he or she goes back. Mm-hmm. And then when this person brings their problem, this one goes, oh yeah, I can benefit from learning that too, and starts making the changes.
So it's like resonating on a whole lot more levels and in lots more issues as a big interconnection, all different. I can see this image of all different kinds of lines going from one person to another and to more, building a huge kind of net of connection on the energy level so that we all benefit from each other's questions and each other's processes.
Yeah, and that's a really nice image. And then also people know one another so that they can later on call them up and be of support to each other.
Because they have, of course, been through, in the workshop, probably been through some profound, also personal experiences in working with themselves and their businesses. And that helps to make this connection and to rely on the others to help you in the future.
Yeah. And for some it's very profound, and others it's just real practical. And like, damn it, I got the results I need, and this is really great, and I can help you too. So it's my real interest is making my work be really, really practical, so people get the results they want and make the shift they want, so they can get on with their lives.
Yeah, they can really use it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes, and it connects a little bit to your image of the meal and the nutrients and so on. And I always say, the proof of the pudding is the eating, which is a very well-known English saying, but only in really eating it, in tasting and experiencing, you get the value of it, and not in just the image or the knowing or the words, but in really living it and experiencing the changes that happened.
Yeah, that's really fitting.
It's for the pudding, but it's also for the whole meal. Yeah.
Making me hungry.
Oh, well, yeah. Here it's almost bedtime. You're just starting the day, I think. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's actually just after lunch.
Okay. Oh, that's quite okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other issues, any other things you would like to say to the people who are now watching? Because we've had a long session now, and I think it's good to round it up a little bit, and maybe there's a thing you still want to add.
Well, yeah. In businesses, I used to be known as the pain relief guy. People would come to me when there's pain in their business, and I would relieve the pain, and that's true. Other people former clients have said, when you bring this guy in, he'll get to the bottom of things whether you want to or not.
Whoa, that sounds like a little bit more pain than
Well,
relief.
there are realities that if you want to make change and have success, it's not all easy and pleasant, but it's worth the effort. And yet, the thing about constellation work is it takes so much of the difficulty out of it. And more recently, some clients here in the States have saying, "Well, oh, you're the activist for the human heart."
Wow.
So,
sounds good.
Yeah, I thought that was really kind of cool because there is a heart of our business and there is a heart of ourselves and our families. And we want the heart of our business to be beating properly and serving us. We want the heart of ourselves and the heart of our family to be strong and nurtured and expressed. And that's what this work is about. It's about having the heart of our expression, the heart of our business, or the heart of our lives expressing well. And rather than being hyper tensed, relaxed and moving on.
Well, that sounds as some great last words. I'm looking forward to our project beginning of November, 1st and 2nd, the business workshop, and third, we have a free day, and then 4, 5, and 6, we have the more personal workshop, Fields of Grace. You're probably looking forward as well, because
I can't wait.
Times if you didn't like it, you wouldn't come back. So, yeah.
Well, I've been coming back for a long time, and I come back because I like it.
Yeah, that's great.
I am looking forward to both to each of the workshops, and I'm also I just like it in Amsterdam. I like the people there, and I like being there, so it's good.
Well, then for now, I would say thank you very much. See you later in a week or 5, 6, I think 6 or 7 weeks. We'll see each other live, and I'll click the button and we'll end this interview. And thank you so much for making the time and making it happen.
It's a real pleasure and a delight. Thanks, Margo. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.